Hi everyone, this is Scott Davenport. In this ON1 short clip, we're going to use just two filters to really make an amazing sunset scene. So some days, like this day here, nature didn't give us incredible color, but it gave us a lot of nice texture up in the skies, and with a little bit of drag on the shutter, something nice in the foreground. So the first thing we'll do with this photo is just a couple of tiny tweaks to get it looking good to do the stylization. For this one, my histogram looks pretty good. I'm just going to bump up the shadows a tiny bit to open up really the rocks and a little bit of the foreground. And while I'm here, I'll add a small amount of structure overall to the scene. This is that micro contrast to get things, these little details in the foreground and the rocks visible, and even a bit in the clouds here to get some of that texture visible. Also warm up the temperature just a bit, so that we get a good baseline here. Not too much though, tiny touch. One more basic thing to do is going to be in the effects module, and this is dynamic contrast to get those rocks to really pop out. So we'll add dynamic contrast, and natural looks good. I'm going to adjust the small setting, and I'm watching the rocks. I'm not paying attention to the rest of the scene, really just watching this rock here and this rock here, because overall this is too strong for the photo. But I'll use the new masking capabilities we have in Photo RAW 2018. I'm going to add a luminosity mask, and I want to have the contrast affect these rocks. Pressing the O key, this is the mask. We've masked away the contrast from the rocks. I want the opposite of that, so I'll invert it. Now I'm applying that contrast to the rocks and to a lot of the scene. From here, I'll adjust our window slider and start having that disappear from the sky and from a healthy amount of the foreground. Somewhere around there. I don't mind a little bit of it in that foreground. And maybe adjust the levels to shift that and just balance exactly where in the foreground that's going to apply. That looks good. We'll turn off the view, and now we can see that the contrast has affected just the rocks. Now we'll get to the sunset part of things. I'm going to add a split tone filter. And split tones are nice because we can set a highlight color, a shadow color, and then decide with the balance how much of the scene to consider a highlight or a shadow. I want to make this a warmer tone scene, so the first thing I'll do is adjust the hue slider and kind of nudge that toward an orange type tone, so something around there. If I bring up our window here, I can use a color picker. Let's make something kind of bright and bring this around. And you can watch it change in the scene. So somewhere in this area is looking pretty good. So that's nice bright orange. Close that one out. And we can do the same thing with the shadows. Click on that, and I can now decide what do I want for the shadows. And I want something cool. I don't want anything too vibrant there. I want those rocks to remain cool. Well, around there is looking pretty nice, so we'll close that out. From here, we can adjust the balance. So if I slide balance to the left, it's going to make the photo cooler. We're biasing it toward the shadow tone. If I go warmer, I can really start to make this a nice warm scene. And somewhere around there looks good. We can also play with the amount sliders, adding a little more of that orange tone, or a little less depending on our tastes. I don't want to push that too far, because I don't want to have any artifacting happening in the very bright parts of the scene. In fact, we can protect those areas as well. I'll use the gear menu and go into our highlights, protection slider, and just for those very, very bright highlights, this will prevent any toning from happening in this center part of the scene. So that will remain very bright, white, and true to life. And the rest of the scene will get this interesting split tone value. A final adjustment, I'm going to go back to develop and use a curve. So I'll add a curves control, and we have different color channels we can work with. I'm going to use the red channel and make a very gentle tug upward. Now if I push this very far, you'll see how red this can get. I don't want that at all. I just want a tiny little bit. So before that curve and after. There you go. So the magic of this sunset look is using a split tone with a warm color for the highlights, a cool color for the shadows, and blending it. And then go explore your curves where you can either add a little bit more red, or maybe you want to take away a little bit of blue, all depending on the cast that happened to be in the scene at the time. My name's Scott Davenport. I hope you've enjoyed this short clip.